From I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Dr. Maya Angelou. When I was 3 and Bailey 4, we had arrived in the musty little town wearing tags on our wrists which instructed, "To whom it may concern," that we were Marguerite and Bailey Johnson Jr. from Long Beach, California, en route to Stamps, Arkansas, care of Mrs. Annie Henderson. Our parents had decided to put an end to their calamitous marriage, and Father shipped us home to his mother. A porter had been charged with our welfare. He got off the train the next day in Arizona, and our tickets were pinned to my brother's inside coat pocket. I don't remember much of the trip, but after we reached the segregated southern part of the journey, things must have looked up. Negro passengers who always traveled with loaded lunch boxes felt sorry for the poor little motherless darlings and piled us with cold fried chicken and potato salad. Years later, I discovered that the United States had been crossed thousands of times by frightened black children traveling alone to their newly affluent parents in northern cities or back to their grandmothers in southern towns when the urban North reneged on its economic promises. The town reacted to us as its inhabitants had reacted to all things new before our coming. It regarded us a while without curiosity, but caution, and after we were seen to be harmless and children, it closed in around us as a real mother embraces a stranger's child, warmly, but not too familiarly. We lived with our grandmother and uncle in the rear of the store. It was always spoken of with a capital S, which she had owned some 25 years. Early in the century, Mama, we soon stopped calling her grandmother, sold lunches to the sawmen in the lumber yards, East Stamps, and the seed men at the cotton gin, West Stamps. Her crisp meat pies and cool lemonade, when joined to her miraculous ability to be in two places at the same time, assured her business success. From being a mobile lunch counter, she set up a stand between the 2 points of fiscal interest and supplied the workers' need for a few years. Then she had the store built in the heart of the Negro area. Over the years, it became the lay center of activities in town. On Saturdays, barbers sat their customers in the shade of the porch of the store, and troubadours on their ceaseless crawlings through the South leaned across its benches and sang their sad songs of the Brazos while they played juice harps and cigar box guitars. The formal name of the store was the W.M. Johnson General Merchandise Store. Customers could find food staples, a good variety of colored threads, mash for hogs, corn for chickens, coal oil for lamps, light bulbs for wealthy, shoestrings, hairdressing, balloons, and flower seeds. Anything not visible had only to be ordered. Until we became familiar enough to belong to the store, it to us. We were locked up in a fun house of things where the attendant had gone home for life. Each year I watched the field across from the store turn caterpillar green, then gradually frosty white. I knew exactly how long it would be before the big wagons would pull into the front yard and load on the cotton pickers at daybreak to carry them to the remains of slavery's plantations. During the picking season, my grandmother would get out of the bed at 4 o'clock. She never used an alarm clock, and creak down to her knees and chant in a sleep-filled voice, "Our Father, thank you for letting me see this new day. Thank you that you didn't allow the bed I lay on last night to be my cooling board, nor my blanket, my winding sheet. Guide my feet this day along the straight and narrow, and help me to put a bridle on my tongue. Bless this house and everybody in it. Thank you. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen." Before she had quite arisen, she called our names and issued orders and pushed her large feet into homemade slippers and across the bare lye-washed wooden floor to light the coal oil lamp. The lamplight in the store gave a soft, make-believe feeling to our world, which made me want to whisper and walk about on tiptoe. The odors of onions and oranges and kerosene had been mixing all night and wouldn't be disturbed until the wooden slate was removed from the door and the early morning air forced its way in with the bodies of people who had walked miles to reach the pickup place. Sister, I'll have 2 cans of sardines. I'm going to work so fast today, I'm going to make you look like you standing still. Let me have a hunk of cheese and some cider crackers. Just give me a couple of them fat peanut patties. That would be from a picker who was taking his lunch. The greasy brown paper sack was stuck behind the bib of his overalls. He'd used the candy as a snack before the noon sun called the workers to rest. In those tender mornings, the store was full of laughing and joking and boasting and bragging. One man was going to pick 200 pounds of cotton, another 300. Even the children were promising to bring home 4 bits and 6 bits. The champion picker of the day before was the hero of the dawn. If he prophesied that the cotton in today's field was going to be sparse and stick to the bowls like glue, every listener would grunt a hearty agreement. The sound of the empty cotton sacks dragging over the floor and the murmurs of waking people were sliced by the cash register as we rang up the 5-cent sales. If the morning sounds and smells were touched with the supernatural, the late afternoon had all the features of the normal Arkansas life. In the dying sunlight, the people dragged rather than their empty cotton sacks. Brought back to the store, the pickers would step out of the backs of the truck and fold down, dirt disappointed, to the ground. No matter how much they had picked, it wasn't enough. Their wages wouldn't even get them out of debt to my grandmother, not to mention the staggering bill that waited on them at the white commissary downtown. The sounds of the new mornings had been replaced with grumbles about cheating houses, weighted scales, snakes, skimpy cotton, and dusty roads. In later years, I was to confront the stereotyped picture of gay song-singing cotton pickers with such inordinate rage that I was told, even by fellow blacks, that my persona or paranoia was embarrassing. But I had seen the fingers cut by the mean little cotton bolls. I had witnessed the backs and shoulders of arms and legs resisting any further demands. Some of the workers would leave their sacks at the store to be picked up by the following morning, but a few had to take them home for repairs. I winced to picture them sewing the coarse material under a coal oil lamp with fingers stiffening from the day's work. In too few hours, they would have to walk back to Sister Henderson's store, get victuals, and load again onto the trucks. Then they would face another day of trying to earn enough for the whole year with the heavy knowledge that they were going to end the season as they started it, without the money or credit necessary to sustain a family for 3 months. In cotton picking time, the late afternoons revealed the harshness of black Southern life, which in the early mornings had been softened by nature's blessings of grogginess, forgetfulness, and the soft lamplight. When Bailey was 6 and I was a year younger, we used to rattle off the timetables with the speed I was later to see Chinese children in San Francisco employ on their abacuses. Our summer gray pot-bellied stove bloomed rosy red during winter and became a severe disciplinarian threat if we were so foolish as to indulge in making mistakes. Uncle Willie used to sit like a giant black Z. He had been crippled as a child, and hear us testify of the Lafayette County Training School's inabilities or abilities. His face pulled down on one left side, as if a pulley had been attached to his lower teeth, and his left hand was only a mite bigger than Bailey's, But on the second mistake or on the third hesitation, his big overgrown right hand would catch one of us behind the collar and in the same moment would thrust the culprit toward the dull red heater which throbbed like a devil's toothache. We were never burned, although once I might have been, when I was so terrified I tried to jump onto the stove to remove the possibility of it remaining a threat. Like most children, I thought if I could face the worst danger voluntarily and triumph, I would forever have power over it. But in my case of sacrificial effort, I was thwarted. Uncle Willie held tight to my dress, and I only got close enough to smell the clean, dry scent of hot iron. We learn the times table without understanding their grand principles simply because we have the capacity and no alternative. The tragedy of lameness seems so unfair to children that they are embarrassed in its presence, and they, most recently off nature's mold, sense that they have only narrowly missed being another of her jokes. In relief at the narrow escape, they vent their emotions in impatience and criticism of the unlucky cripple. Mama related times without end and without any show of emotion how Uncle Willie had been dropped when he was 3 years old by a woman who was minding him. She seemed to hold no rancor against the babysitter, nor for her just God who allowed the accident. She felt it necessary to explain over and over again to those who knew the story by heart that he wasn't born that way. In our society, where two-legged, two-armed, strong black men were able to best to eke out only the necessities of life, Uncle Willie, with his starched shirts, shined shoes, and shelves full of food, was the whipping boy and butt of jokes of the underemployed and underpaid. Fate not only disabled him, but laid a double-tiered barrier in his path. He was also proud and sensitive. Therefore, he couldn't pretend that he wasn't crippled, nor could he deceive himself that people were not repelled by his defect. Only once in all the years of trying not to watch him, I saw him pretend to himself and others that he wasn't lame. Coming home from school one day, I saw a dark car in our front yard. I rushed in to find a strange man and woman. Uncle Willie said later they were school teachers from Little Rock, drinking Dr. Pepper in the cool of the store. I sensed a wrongness around him, like an alarm clock that had gone off without being set. I knew it couldn't be the strangers. Not frequently, but often enough, travelers pulled off the main road to buy tobacco or soft drinks in the only Negro store in Stamps. When I looked at Uncle Willie, I knew what was pulling my mind's coattails. He was standing erect behind the counter, not leaning forward or resting on the small shelf that had been built for him. Erect, his eyes seemed to hold me with a mixture of threats and appeal. I dutifully greeted the strangers and roamed my eyes around his walking stick. It was nowhere to be seen. He said, this, my niece, she's, just come from school. Then to the couple, you know how, children are. These days, they play all the day at school and can't wait to get home and play some more. The people smiled very friendly. He added, "Go on out and play, sister." The lady laughed in a soft Arkansas voice and said, "Well, you know, Mr. Johnson, they say you're only a child once. Have you children of your own?" Uncle Willie looked at me with an impatience I hadn't seen in his face even when he took 30 minutes to loop the laces over his high-top shoes. I thought I told you go outside and play." Before I left, I saw him lean back on the shelves of Garrett Snuff, Prince Albert, and Spark Plug chewing tobacco. No, ma'am. no children, no wife. He tried to laugh. I have an old mother and my brothers, two children to look after. I didn't mind his using us to make himself look good. In fact, I would have pretended to be his daughter if he wanted me to. Not only did I not feel any loyalty to my own father, I figured that if I had been Uncle Willie's child, I would have received much better treatment. The couple left after a few minutes, and from the back of the house I watched the red car scare chickens, raise dust, and disappear toward Magnolia. Uncle Willie was making his way down the long shadowed aisle between the shelves and the counter, hand over hand, like a man climbing out of a dream. I stayed quiet and watched him lurch from one side, bumping to the other, until he reached the coal oil tank. He put his hand behind the dark recess and took his cane in the strong fist and shifted his weight on the wooden support. He thought he had pulled it off. I'll never know why it was important to him that the couple, he said later that he'd never seen them before, would take a picture of a whole Mr. Johnson back to Little Rock. He must have tired of being crippled, as prisoners tire of penitentiary bars, and the guilty tire of blame. The high-top shoes and the cane, his uncontrollable muscles and thick tongue, and the looks he suffered of either contempt or pity had simply worn him out. And for one part of an afternoon, he wanted no part of them. I understood and felt closer to him at that moment than ever before or since. From I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Dr. Maya Angelou.